Benghazi.
Yes.
As we know, there's this New York Times article which came out with a lot of, I guess, gray areas as opposed to black and white. Is there anything in that report that the State Department sees that changes the equation about the investigation, or any substantive, information that really is new that would cause the investigation or conclusions from the ARB to be done differently?
Well, a couple points. The investigation is ongoing, and that's FBI's lane, as everyone I'm sure has heard me say ad nauseum in this room. And more than a year ago, the Independent Accountability Review Board thoroughly examined what happened on the ground. Much of what's in this in-depth investigation that you mentioned tracks with what the ARB found and with our understanding of the facts. I'm happy to talk through some of the specifics if folks are interested. I'm obviously not going to go line by line and fact check the report, but I think what's been clear from the ARB, certainly what's clear from this and other press reports throughout many, many months, is that this was a complicated situation, that things could have been done differently, that it's not black and white. We've been clear about that, and since the tragedy, we've taken a number of steps, many outlined in the ARB, to further improve diplomatic security and better protect our people. That's certainly been where our focus has been here at the State Department. Obviously, the FBI is conducting the ongoing investigation.
Could I just take one of the main points,
Yeah.
which is this issue of Al-Qaeda? The New York Times, in essence, is saying that Al-Qaeda was not, let's say Al-Qaeda did not carry out this attack. I know there are a lot of caveats in that, but does the State Department agree with that?
Well, I make a few points on that. The investigation is ongoing, A. But at this point, we have no indications that core Al-Qaeda, which I think is what most people are referring to when they talk about, quote, Al-Qaeda, directed or planned what happened in Benghazi. No indications at this point that core Al-Qaeda directed or planned what happened in Benghazi. We do know, as we've said from the beginning, that extremists were involved. These folks don't carry ID cards. They don't come out and wear a T-shirt that says, "I belong to Al-Qaeda," right? We know some of them may have taken inspiration from Al-Qaeda ideology, certainly. That's what the investigation is looking into right now. Who did this? What were these groups? Who were these people following? Who directed and planned it? That's what the investigation is looking at. So I'm not going to get into a sort of what we think is the latest in terms of actual culpability. But what I will say again is that core Al-Qaeda, which I think is what people generally refer to when they're talking about Al-Qaeda, we have no indications at this point that they directed or planned it. And I think that's a key point that's worth, as I just did, repeating a couple times.
You do agree that they do all use the same rhetoric, the same dogma, they espouse the same theories, they propose the same thing.
I think that's a gross oversimplification. Well, let me finish, Said. In some respects, obviously, these groups all espouse a certain kind of extremist and terrorist ideology. Clearly, these were violent folks on the ground. There are 4 Americans who are no longer with us who I think would speak exactly to that fact. Right? These were clearly terrorists. I think I would make the point, though, that words matter and facts matter. And a lot of people in Washington for the last many, many months have said, we want facts, we want details. Well, it actually matters whether you say core Al-Qaeda directed and planned it, or they didn't, or just some folks that were affiliated with a local group or militia or terrorist organization. That's what we're looking into right now, whether they took some inspiration from some sort of similar ideology. That distinction actually matters. And for everyone that says they want to know all the facts about Benghazi, I think it's worth their time to look into all these accounts, to look into in-depth stories like this and others, and really take that all into account before going out and making blanket statements that the facts just quite frankly don't back up.
So to be clear, is it your latest understanding that this group, Ansar al-Sharia, is not linked to core Al-Qaeda? Is that an accurate statement?
So it is not the U.S. government's assessment or position that Ansar al-Sharia is an affiliate of core Al-Qaeda. We don't recognize them as an affiliate of core Al-Qaeda. As folks may or may not know, they're sort of an official, for lack of a better term, process for affiliates to claim allegiance to core Al-Qaeda. We've seen it with other groups long ago with AQAP and others. So I don't believe they've even said that they're gone through the official process, and we as the U.S. government do not consider them to be an official affiliate. That being said, that doesn't mean they're any less dangerous, and it doesn't mean that we're any less concerned about them. We're gravely concerned about them, in fact. We're gravely concerned with their activities. There's a couple different Ansar al-Sharias floating throughout that region, and we're concerned about all of them. But again, it's the facts and the words we use that matter. Whether or not they're affiliate doesn't mean we're any less concerned about them.
Just one more quick question on another conclusion from that New York Times report was the role, resurrecting the idea that, you know, the video did in fact play a large role. Do you feel, does the department feel, you know, somewhat vindicated in light of that conclusion? Just, you know, I mean, still, what is your latest understanding of the role of the video, I guess?
No, it's a good question, and I don't want to use that term. I think a couple points on this. The first is that it was clear to anyone watching what happened around the Muslim world on that day that the video clearly, in places, inspired protests and violent protests in some places. If we look at Tunis, if we look at Khartoum, and we know that extremists throughout the region sought to take advantage of the video, including in Libya. The investigation's looking into now exactly what role that played. This was a very complicated situation. There were a number of folks involved in this attack, some of whom, were there for different reasons. Not everyone was there for the same reason, but we know, it's just common sense. You could see the protests around the world that the video was clearly being used by extremists as some sort of rallying cry against the United States. What role that played in the attack, that's obviously all part of the ongoing investigation, but we certainly always said from the beginning that this was complicated. There was a lot at play here, that the video clearly inspired anger and in some places violence, and you could see that just from watching the news accounts of it, quite frankly. So it's just more of a common sense argument, I think, at this point.